to celebrate the true reason why we're here, which is student achievement in academics. And we must celebrate again CMSD's academic progress on the state report card, showing that for the first time in history, CMSD achieved 3 stars and is meeting state standards. I'm proud to report that CMSD received the highest rating of all urban districts in the state of Ohio, and we are the only urban district in our state meeting state standards. We achieved significant gains in English language arts and math proficiency last year. Our gap closing and progress efforts have been remarkable, with 8 out of 9 subgroups exceeding growth expectations in math and 7 out of 9 exceeding them in English language arts. Now, while there is still work to be done in K-3 literacy and graduation rates, both of these measures are higher than what they were the year prior. This progress is just the beginning, and our report card shows
Present.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I'm going to bring up our guest first for ordinance 1014. Come on up. By Councilmembers Casey, Harrison, and Griffin, by Department, request an emergency ordinance authorizing Director of Economic Development to enter into a loan agreement with Neighborhood Health Care Incorporated or its designee to provide economic development assistance to partially finance the redevelopment of property located at 13027 Lorraine Avenue needed to expand their operations and for other associated costs necessary to redevelop the property. Good morning, Mr. Smotzer.
Good morning.
All right.
I'd like to introduce our guests that are here today with Neighborhood Family Practice. Their legal name is Neighborhood Healthcare, Inc. To my immediate right is the President and CEO, Dominic Hobson. And to his immediate right is Gina Gavlik. She's the Vice President of Development for the organization.
All right. Good morning. All right. Thank you. We'll jump right into it.
So I have a presentation before you to give an overview here. So the City of Department of Economic Development, just a little bit of background, we were approached and met with an organization which many of you are familiar with. They provide great behavioral health, pharmaceutical services to the City of Cleveland here in many of our wards, predominantly the West Side wards. Earlier this year, when they approached us with their expansion project over at 10317, we assisted to help offset some high costs with the former vacant abandoned CVS drugstore. We assisted with a pre-development grant under our neighborhood development program. We executed that back in May. Then I was approached by Dominic and his team due to some cost overruns with the building, the vacant CVS, including code compliance, water line issues. Their costs went from $2.1 million to over $2.8 million. So we then put together a financial package to help partially fund those costs. And I'd like to give you this presentation before you. This would help if I use the clicker. A little bit about Neighborhood Family Practice. They've been around since they were founded in 1980. They're a federal qualified health center. They're the only federal qualified health center on Cleveland's west side. Some of the vital services that they provide, the health care that they provide are primary midwifery, dental, HIV, refugee, behavioral health, and pharmaceutical health, pharmaceutical and low-cost drugs. They have 7 locations in Cleveland and Lakewood. In 2023, they had 81,848 visits by 22,140 patients. They have a bilingual staff. They focus on diversity, equity, intersectionality, and belonging. Many of their practices that they, again, primary health, behavioral health, dental, medication, midwifery, refugee, lab services, financial screening, and assistance. Their current location where they're at is 11709 Lorraine Avenue, and there is a picture of the building at the former CVS that they're looking to relocate to. Their current facility is 4,870 square feet. This new facility that they will be expanding to is 10,125 square feet, and will also be able to significantly accommodate additional parking, not only for their increased employees, but also for the people who are coming there for their services. This is just a layout of the vacant CVS of what their plans would look like with the rooms, the office rooms that they will have. And we have Director Tom McNair that just joined us. Here's a couple of photos of what the inside is going to look like upon project completion renovation. Their timeline for their project, they signed a total of a 35-year lease, but it's a 20-year lease with 3 5-year options. They also have an option for first right of refusal to purchase the building. August 2024, some demolition started, and they anticipate their project being open sometime in 2025 and 2026 with the launch of the pharmaceutical services that will be replaced because 3 CVS Rite Aid locations closed in that neighborhood. They currently do not have one right now. Here is the increased and updated cost for the sources and uses with the various grants that they receive for their project. The county is also partnering, in addition to the City of Cleveland's $500,000 loan that we are providing on this. Earlier this year that I mentioned, we executed a $50,000 neighborhood development program grant to help offset some pre-development costs on this now $2.876 million project. Some of the economic development return on investment numbers. This is kind of a positive absorption of 5,225 square feet when you look at the lease that will become available with the square footage on 117th versus the total square footage of the CVS location at West 130th. With this project, there will be 13 new full-time equivalent jobs with a new $1.5 million payroll to the City of Cleveland. 16 full-time jobs from the 117th location will be relocated and retained with a $763,000 payroll. What does this equate to the City of Cleveland? This will be approximately $58,658 of new annual income tax revenue to the city over the loan repayment term. This is going to add $586,000 and some change to the city's coffers. They will enter into a community benefits agreement for project costs of less than $20 million, and they will also enter into a workforce development agreement. My final slide here that we have, they have a long history of providing great services, health care to vulnerable populations here in the City of Cleveland. They're going to relocate to the larger space that I prefaced earlier. There will be addition of dental and pharmacy services, especially people covered by Medicaid, many times often struggle to find affordable, timely, and accessible dental care. And again, within the last 24 months, 3 pharmacies closed within the neighborhood there. This will support the residents in Ward 16, the West Side, and all the residents here, and not only in the City of Cleveland. That is the conclusion of my presentation here.
All right, thank you, Mr. Smotzer. I'm just pulling up the executive summary. What can you share the loan terms? Because I didn't see that
Sure.
in the executive summary.
The loan term is going to be a 10-year term and amortization upon project completion. A 3% interest, thank you, fixed.
Okay. 10 years, 3% interest fixed, amortized. Okay, I think that's all I had. Great organization, does good work across our city, supporting those who are the most vulnerable in your neighborhood base, which is always good. On the east side, we have Neon. We have neighborhood family practice on the west side, and I believe that our neighborhoods are better because of organizations like yours, right? People can come in. Over in Collinwood, have the dedicated senior medical center that's there. So you have these facilities that are high quality who support those in our neighborhoods. So, I have no questions or issues. And any questions from the committee? Sure. Councilwoman Santana.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just, these types of projects is what makes me feel proud to sit here and be able to support, healthcare centers like Neighborhood Family Practice. For as long as I could remember, they've been a clinic that's been in the neighborhood,
that's right.
Serving the most vulnerable, as Kevin said. So I just want to thank you, and your staff is great. Your doctors are amazing. You are accessible. I love that you have bilingual staff. It's just, and you guys have gotten it from the beginning, and so I appreciate that. I do, through the chair, too. I don't want to make it that simple for CEO Hobson, but what is the vision that you see for Neighborhood Family Practice, in the city, with your new leadership?
Yeah. Through the chairperson to the council member, I think our focus is on building a world-class front door to healthcare in Cleveland. We have world-class specialty care, heart surgeons, we have cancer treatment and everything that you call tertiary care, but we need a world-class front door. If people don't have access to primary care, you don't get to those things that we know that are life-saving. So our goal is to build world-class front door and primary and preventative care across Cleveland. And we're doing that through partnership and collaboration with other organizations who are doing similar work. We are already serving patients, accounting for every city ward, despite our West Side presence. So people are driving long distances, passing up multiple other options, and taking multiple bus routes to seek care from us. And for us, that means that there's a lot of demand and desire for the services that we provide. So our goal is to continue to provide high quality care, but make sure that we bring everyone to the table to change and improve some of our outcomes that are unfortunately worst in class across the country. So that is our vision over the next 3 to 5 years to continue to move in that direction.
Good. Thank you. And through the chair to Mr. Hobson, I'm curious to know, have you seen, and I know when I was in my background is public health, the chronic disease in our area was at its highest. I'm just curious to know, do you see that improving? I mean, I know we have other issues like suicide, right? Like that mental health. I'm curious to know what's the landscape of our residents' health in the city of Cleveland recently. And I'm not sure if there's, I've looked for data, but it's very difficult to access, but I'm sure you're the expert and you
Through
know
the
this.
chairperson to the council member, I have a public health background myself, so public health and community health is a passion for me, and I think things are not improving at the pace that we need them to. They're improving in pockets. When we look at our patients and we kind of monitor those outcomes, we see them improving. We see our population data with our patients improving, but that's not enough for us. And that's where I think, we're the first ones to hold ourselves accountable to say that if we're providing great care, but the community is not moving forward, then we're still losing. We're not having the impact that we need to have.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I would love to see all CVSs have neighborhood family practice in it. So how do we make that happen? Thank you to the chair. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Councilman McCormack.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'll be brief. I want to reflect Councilman Santana's comments to our CEO. I forget your title. I'm so sorry. What is
Vice President of Development.
Okay, our Vice President of Development here as well. Neighborhood Family Practice is a great community partner in Ward 3, and I know beyond as well. And Councilman Hairston will appreciate that. One of the first things he did when he came on board was call me and said, I want you to come out and meet me on site. And, because we get a lot of calls into our office, so when we have a face and a name and a team that we can say, refer off to, it's critically important. So, his first week he called me. So I always do appreciate that outreach and the work you're doing. I also, what Councilwoman Santana said to these old, and I'm curious from our economic development team's perspective, reutilizing these former pharmacies, to ensure they're not all spirit Halloweens. I'm curious, Chair, or a vape shop, Chair to the Director, are we starting to think about, especially with the closure of Rite Aid, and putting aside, obviously, we need pharmacy services in the city of Cleveland, but where there are vacant spaces like this that may lend flexibly to things because they're kind of big open spaces, are we thinking critically about what to do with them?
To the chairperson, to the councilman, I went into Director McNair's office actually in regards to this piece of legislation and just posed the idea and just said, I think this is a great example of what can be done with many of these vacant buildings, and including maybe some of our other not-for-profits that are looking to grow and expand, potentially to take over some of these vacant Rite Aid, CVS's, and others that are been popping up over the last couple of years in our respective neighborhoods.
Thank you. I don't know if you want to respond, Director.
The only thing through the chair to Councilman McCormack, I was at a Spirit Halloween the other day and very excited for what's coming on October 31st. But I do think you're right. It is something that we are taking very seriously. There is a task force that has been created around the vacant pharmacies that are starting to pollute our neighborhoods. Councilwoman Gray has been appointed through the council president to sit on that task force.
Okay.
That is looking primarily at two things, one of which is first and foremost, how do we continue to serve the residents of the city of Cleveland with their pharmacy needs? The second part is how we kind of handle the real estate impacts of those closures. This is a use that is solving both of those problems, right, which I think is incredibly exciting. So do know that this is a top priority, and it's why council and the administration are looking at these together. And as Mr. Schmatzer pointed out, right, I think that this is a phenomenal use and is possibly something we can replicate.
Thank you. I'm glad to hear we have representation on that committee as well. Chair to our CEO, just two quick questions for you, or three actually, I'm sorry. Did you say there will be pharmacy services or some sort of, tell me more about that at this site?
Through the chairperson to the councilperson, we currently operate two pharmacies, one at our Ridge Road location and one at our Periodist Health Center. And so we'll be adding a third pharmacy, and it'll be a drive-up pharmacy. It's one of those things, it's a CVS, a former CVS. The pharmacy is already there. Why not operate it? And we know convenience is key for many of us. You don't want to get out of the car and drive up, drive and walk in. So having that drive-up pharmacy is key. But we're already delivering prescriptions to 12 zip codes across the city. And then now we are mailing prescriptions to a further range outside of our delivery landscape, just trying to address the need that we've seen from these pharmacy closures.
So I that's huge.
Absolutely.
And I really want to thank you for that. I mean, and obviously we can't trust corporate pharmacies to provide these services to our community. So Chairman, I mean, I'm thinking about, the vaccination issues that our health, well, I'm not going to bring those up at this table. It took me days to get a vaccine because I was denied by CVS, Walgreens. Our insurance didn't cover it. So, to pass back to the administration, as we look at our insurance plans, can we partner with a neighborhood family practice for city and other health clinics that are not corporate across the city of Cleveland instead of partnering with CVS? I mean, again, CEO, I went into the CVS, I went to the counter, I have a CVS Caremark insurance card, and they said, we don't accept that here. You got to make an appointment with the Minute Clinic, which is 10 feet away in the building. And then I went online, there were no appointments for a month. I'm going to leave that story where it's at. But my point is, as we think about grocery stores, as we think about pharmacies, having great partners like you, how do we invest in you? How do we ensure that people are using your services and that, it's benefiting the organization? Two other quick questions to our CEO. One, are you going to have any bike parking at this site? Have we thought about that for folks that don't have a car?
Yeah. Through the chairperson to the council member, we have not.
Okay.
That is a great question. Of course, we're always very intentional with our locations, making sure that they're close to bus routes with easy access for those without means of travel. And one of the reasons we picked this location is because it's 0.6 miles from our existing location, and many of our community, our residents walk to that site. But that is a great question. I'm not sure if there's any bike parking already there, but we'll make sure to
I
look
would just
into that.
flag that. Thank you.
Yeah.
And then last question, Chair, to the CEO. I would imagine, I think this is Ward 16, but from what I understand, we've got Spanish spoken here, Arabic, a lot of different languages. So is it the plan to have multilingual folks at this site? Or you perhaps already do in the previous location?
Through the chairperson to the council member, yes, sir, that is a priority. We already have employees, cultural health navigators that speak multiple different languages. Our providers at the locations are bilingual. We are experts at providing care to our refugee and immigrant community because we're intentional about hiring from the community and supporting those patients intentionally. So that will be a primary focus for us.
Thank you. Chair, bravo to this project. This
Absolutely.
is really the top best use I think we could have seen here. And I want to thank Neighborhood Family Practice for continuing to invest in the city.
All right. Thank you, Councilman McCormick. Councilman Harsh.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll be very brief. I use Neighborhood Family Services for Neighborhood Family Practices services for many years when I was young and uninsured. Your reputation in the neighborhood is stellar. When people don't know where they can go, they know they can go to Neighborhood Family practice. So thank you for all the work that you do for the people in the community. You were there for me. I would be foolish not to be there for you. So I'm happy to support this, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for bringing it to us. Oh, and also echo the wonderful reuse of a CVS. Fantastic. Love to see it.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And I see in your, yes,
Yes, sir.
and seeing your project summary, I see EV charging stations. So is that something that you all are planning to do?
To the chairperson, I included that in there as a potential, for legislation to approve that we could fund it if they so choose to put those in. So,
Okay, all right. Councilwoman Spencer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's good to be here this morning for this discussion, and I know that Councilman Casey must be absolutely thrilled that this project is coming to fruition and infusing life back into this vacant building. I wanted to ask a few questions of our economic development staff about the city assistance, and then a couple more questions from there. But so first is I see that I think this is absolutely terrific. I see that the City of Cleveland is also offering a $50,000 neighborhood development program grant through the chair. Just wanted to confirm, and those grant. What are the purpose of the neighborhood development program grants through the chair to the economic development team?
Through the chair to Councilwoman Spencer. So the Neighborhood Development Planning Program essentially is a small grant that can help cover soft costs and typically those are going to projects that we anticipate supporting in some manner. Right.
Great. And then through the chair to Director McNair or to Kevin, this $500,000 loan that is up for legislation today, it's a UDAG loan. Is that, my understanding is that's sort of an older program that due to some repayments, we have some capital available. It's not, so this is sort of old money that is recycling its way back into the city that we're able to redeploy as a loan?
Yes,
through the chair?
through the chair to the councilwoman, the Urban Development Action Grant Program dates back to the 1980s. There was a sum of money that came to the city that was some combination of population, poverty rates, those sorts of things. It is funds that have been kind of lent out and brought back in many times over the course of years. It can be loaned or granted. I think it's kind of dwindled down to the point that at this point we primarily view it as a revolving loan pool. But in today's interest rate environment, it can still be a very powerful tool to help projects like this move forward.
That's great, and I think that was my tagging another question onto that. At this point, this is not, no portion of this is a forgivable loan. This is a 3% fixed rate loan for $500,000 through the chair. Okay.
That's correct.
And then just a couple of follow-up questions to our guests. It's so good to see Dominic and Gina at the table today, Mr. Chair. And looking at the funding sources slide, these projects are not easy. These are very expensive. I mean, bringing back a vacant building and repurposing it and doing all the things is very, very costly. And I wanted to ask our guests from NFP, I noticed that there's a couple of ARPA mentions in here, totaling up to about, looks like $500,000. You know, how are we going to do to fill gaps in projects like these now that ARPA is sort of run its course? That was a one-time source of funds. So I'm just curious to get a little feedback about project feasibility in an environment where those one-time funds may no longer be available. Through the chair.
Through the chairperson to Councilwoman, it's going to be difficult. We're leveraging and repurposing some historical capital ARPA dollars that were given to us directly from the federal government, and then the county provided us a small grant using some of their leftover ARPA dollars, especially for nonprofits like NFP with tighter and smaller margins. Capital projects are going to be more difficult to come by. Fundraising is tough right now based on the market. Foundations are not typically willing to fund capital, so it's a lot of fundraising. I suspect that it's going to take a much longer time for these projects to come online because the individual and corporate donors are going to be key to filling that gap. And then I suspect that organizations will need to loan, borrow and go into more debt. Thankfully for us, we currently are carrying a low debt load, so we're able to partner with the city and the county on this effort. But it's going to make it much more difficult for nonprofits to do the kind of projects that we're talking about today.
I'm not happy to hear that. It's the answer I expected, but I just wanted to take a moment for a reality check about these projects are huge and heavy lifts, and like any project like this, there's a big capital stack, a lot of sources. But again, those one-time grant sources are very valuable, and I don't think the hard costs of construction are coming down anytime soon either, which makes it all the more challenging. But needless to say, thrilled that the city is able to support this project, and you have my full support. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Joe Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to follow in on some of the line of questioning that my colleague Jenny Spencer, but before we go into that line, I wanted to ask Neighborhood Family Practice, what is the foot traffic like on a daily basis and then on an annual?
Through the chairperson to the council member, we serve over 22,000 patients each year.
22,000?
22,000 patients from every city ward and every suburb of the county receive services from our organization, and that spans across over 81,000 visits that we're serving in those primary care, women's health, behavioral health, pharmacy, dental, refugee health, and HIV services.
It seems like your service is quite impressive, given the fact that it's coming from all around. Do you have any ability or capacity to expand your business to the east side?
Through the chairperson to the council member, there is an interest, and primarily because of the outcomes that we see. But we know that we have to be measured and strategic in that approach, especially considering the cost of building out a clinic. Right? I think we have a reputation both in the healthcare community where we believe we'll be able to recruit our providers if we were to expand. We believe that we have the patient and demand for our services to grow across the city, but the primary barrier would be funding a build out of a clinic. Our board did a new strategic plan a year ago, and a part of that was we know who we've been and where we've been over the last 40 years, and how can we have a larger impact across the city without ever diminishing the product that we have, because without that, that's who we are. And we have to be able to continue to provide quality services regardless of where we are, how many patients we're serving. But there is an interest, and we're very intentional around finding partners. Right, we have great relationships with our hospital systems. We have relationships with a number of other nonprofits. So we're always exploring and listening to opportunities, but that has historically been a barrier, finding the dollars to help build out a project. We're looking at $2.8 billion here, and it's just difficult to find and replicate that in short order.
Right. Well, I would certainly, after this presentation is over, to hopefully sit down with you. We have a location that would be perfect, and I think the cost would be very limited because the build out is already there. It's almost turnkey. And so we would love to see you expand on the east side of the city of Cleveland, and there's some possibilities. And if we could have this kind of a facility serving the citizens in my neighborhood, you of course should have all of the surrounding neighborhoods coming to get these services, in addition to having a surrounding area of Warrensville, Maple Heights, Garfield, Shaker, and other communities that would potentially come in to be part of your clients. So look forward to working with you. Mr. Chairman, I don't have any unreadiness on this, and I met with you before. So the good news is, opportunities avails themselves. So look forward to reaching out, seeing if this, what we have might be something that you might can turn attention to. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilman Jones. Seeing no further questions, orders number 1014-2024 stands approved. Congratulations, you all. Thank you. Much success and work. All right, ordinance number 1009-2024 by Council Members Bishop, Harrison, and Griffin by departmental request, an emergency ordinance authorizing directors of economic development and/or building and housing to apply for and accept a brownfields remediation program grant from the Ohio Department of Development and Demolition asbestos and waste removal, site remediation, and other necessary services needed for future redevelopment of the former National Acme site located at 170 and 221 East 130th Street, and authorizing the director to enter into one or more contracts with Cuyahoga County Land Reutilization Corporation to manage and implement the grant. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I am joined here today by John Fosbender, who is our Brownfield and Sites Manager within the Department of Economic Development, talking to you about a very exciting grant that is coming through the city from the Ohio Department of Development, a Brownfield grant for the former National Acme site. I am sure that you have heard us talk about this quite a bit. This is one of the first projects that is being taken on by the Site Readiness for Good Jobs Fund. This is going to be a $7.6 million state brownfield grant that is coming in, being matched by the City of Cleveland through our Building and Housing Department at $2.5 million. This is about a $9+ million cleanup. I think I was talking about this at the table once before. This is a site that has terrorized North Collinwood for a number of years. It is a huge environmental justice issue, and the ability to abate this nuisance and bring it back to market, I think, is going to be extraordinarily impactful in our neighborhood and create the opportunity for high living wage jobs in the community. Anything you'd like to add, Mr. Fosbender?
Sure. The National Acme site is about a 14-acre industrial site that is located within about 100 acres of other industrial development in a pocket between St. Clair and Kirby and Coit. Much of those properties are either vacant or underutilized. Some of them have crumbling buildings on them. And one of the things we're very eager to do, working with our partners at the Sites Fund, is to try to see this parcel, this project, become a catalyst for further development in the area. If we're able to put something in that location that brings in good paying jobs, that will only help, I believe, springboard that area to be something more than just a kind of a down in the mouth old industrial area. So this is a very exciting time for us. As the director said, National Acme, I believe I've heard Councilman Polensek mention it once or twice, but this has been a cancer in his ward for many, many years, and it's exciting to see this moving forward, and we're really pleased that we got the funding. And I wanted to thank our site specialist. She's sitting back there, Natani DeRuyter. She put in a ton of work and was instrumental in us putting together that application to the ODOD, and I just wanted to, she's been wonderful since she joined, but this in particular, she was extremely valuable. I just wanted to point that out to you all. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, Director, anything further? All right. Yes, National Acme is a very big problem that we've been dealing with in Collinwood-Glenville border there for a number of years. Once set in Ward 10, redistricting, and then it's set in Ward 8. And so, previous council people there and the Council Lindsay who continue to be there, continue to carry that torch along with myself to figure out a way to address this National Acme site. I know former Director Donald had begun some work on this site, trying to do some work there, but she then exited City Hall, and so I'm glad that those who came behind her picked up the torch and again continue the work. Just a few questions that I do have. The total, what's the total project cost here for this?
The sum of, I believe I had it written down, I apologize.
Coit Road and 131 Coit. Down from the food bank?
Just down the street.
Yeah.
It's, Mr. Chairman, it's just north of $9 million.
North of 9 million?
Yeah.
Okay. So we're receiving 7, okay. I'm looking at this
You're receiving
file attachment.
$7,628,055.
And then our match is 2.5 million.
Yes.
And just remind me, who applied for and accepted the grant from the state? Who applied for it? The city or the land bank?
Technically, the land bank is the applicant for all of the ODOD brownfield
Right.
remediation grants. We are a sub-grantee,
Okay.
but the way the legislation was structured out of Columbus is that's how it works.
And the $2.5 million is being transferred to who? From that sub-fund, and the ordinance says 10 SF 978?
Initially, this was, a project that the city was undertaking itself, and when the Sites Fund got up and running, it just made sense, because this felt, this has been a priority of even the concept of the Sites Fund since the beginning. Oh, I'm sorry. I think the way that we envision this working with the Sites Fund and the County Land Bank is, the city would, at this point, be something of a pass-through, where the County Land Bank, operating on behalf of the Sites Fund, would go out, contract for the work to be done, and this is a reimbursable grant, so when they get the invoices and the payments in, we would process them on their behalf, and then they would transfer the money over to the Sites Fund and Land Bank. And this is pursuant to an existing agreement between the Building and Housing Department and the County Land Bank.
Right. So the 2.5 million came from where?
There was initially in 2020 a $5 million allocation
Supplemental.
for the demolition budget, and it was earmarked for the National Acme site. And
Okay.
so it's still, I think there's a little over $4 million in that site, because we have done a lot of investigation and work at the site leading up to getting ready to do the work now.
Okay.
So the money is actually going to be funded out of, the matching is going to be funded out of there, and then the Sites Fund would then also get the disbursement funds.
Got it. All right, so the 2.5 is going to come out of the 5 million from 2020 that we set aside to deal with this large site.
Yes, sir.
All right. Now, in the other comments of the file attachment, it says $3.5 million. 2.5 is a grant, but I'm seeing a different number, 3.5 million in the notes here on the other comments.
Right, that's a little confusing, and I apologize for that. Right now, a company called HEPACO has won the bid for the initial phase of the work at the National Acme site, which is removal of the asbestos, removal of the waste, and essentially getting ready for demolition. So that's the first phase. We were, I think that, and this was something that, was primarily arranged between Building and Housing and the Land Bank, but as I understand it, the Land Bank and the Sites Fund were hoping to get an infusion of cash so they could start work. And then, to the extent that there's any overage in the matching, I believe, I actually don't know what the arrangement is, but I think the 3.5 million would address primarily most of that first phase, if not all.
Okay. So is the 3.5 million coming out of the same 5 million?
As I understand it, yes, sir.
And does that 3.5 million include the 2.5 match?
It's
So that
included within
3.5
that 3.5.
Okay, so the 3.5 includes the 2.5 match plus the other additional monies that is needed to clean and remediate the site to prepare it for demolition.
Yes.
Okay. All right, so about $1 million to clean up the rest of the, to get all the waste and stuff out of there. A little under $1 million, rather.
I think so,
Mr.
but,
Chairman.
oh, go ahead. Yes, sir.
Yes, Councilman.
Yeah, so what's the total? I mean, and I'm appreciative of the line of questions here. So what is the holistic total, what it's going to cost to bring this down and clean this up?
It's, I apologize, I didn't have the total calculated, but it's over 9 million. It's almost $10 million.
Right. Because we got 7.6 from the brownfield, plus our match, that gets us to the 9, a little over 9, and then to remediate the waste, that takes us a little over $10 million, because you got to include the waste.
That extra million that we're looking at that was transferred over, that when they sent 3.5 million over, actually it was understood, as I believe it to be true, that understood that it was kind of an advance on the money that they would need, coming from the National Acme pot of money. That includes the amount of the match. I don't know, and I will certainly find out, whether once the match is paid and once we have all the grant funding is in place and there's a total of roughly $10 million that needs to be spent, whether the difference between 3.5 and the match amount is going to be invested in the sites fund, or if it's going to come back to the city. I don't know that.
Okay. Well, I think that's something that we should know.
Yes, sir.
Absolutely. What's going to happen with those additional dollars, right? And not just have dollars floating out in the air and say, oh, well, we'll just take it and put it here, right? In fact, did you all have a spend authority to transfer that $3.5 million over out of
That was done out
that
of,
supplemental ordinance give you expend authority as well?
I don't think in this ordinance, but I think that there was, I think, like I said, it was under an existing contract, but I don't know the answer specifically to that.
Right, but we're spending from a particular fund, though. And so the transfer ordinance from 2020, many times we will set aside the money, but require additional legislative authority to expend the dollars. And because it was demo, I'm not certain whether we just allowed it to move forward because it's demolition, right? And not have separate expend authority. So we need to find out whether, one, that was there expend authority to even use money from the $5 million in the first place, right? And then secondly, we need to be clear on that 3.5, between that 2.5 and 3.5 million dollars has already been transferred from the 5 million set aside in supplemental ordinance back from 2020. Now, the one good thing I would say is that money was not just moved, on its own, that there was some sort of pot set aside, which is the $5 million, what the money's been pulled from. So, that gives me, some level of comfortability there. But we want to know what that difference between that 3.5 and that 2.5. All right.
Yes, sir.
So if we can, Mr. Teicher, we can work on getting that. I'd appreciate it. Now, were the did the money that was sent over to use to start the remediation work up front on the site, was that, I'm guessing because I want to know how do we, you said it was an additional agreement or a current agreement between the land bank?
I'll get you specifics, Councilman or Chairman, but the...
Because I just want to be clear.
Right, no, I understand. As I understand it, there was an agreement between the county land bank and building and housing relating to demolition around the city.
Okay.
And I believe that agreement either would included this type of project, or it was amended to include this project specifically. But again, that was out of the building and housing department. I apologize for not having that answer this morning.
Okay. All right. So, I had a question just about the codes that are listed, like the 31039 and, but you wouldn't have an answer to that. So we had to follow building and housing for that as well. Now that I know that that money came out of the $5 million, I did have a question around the ARPA demo legislation that we set aside $20 million to do that work.
Mm-hmm.
Did any of the work with this site come out of that $20 million ARPA demolition dollars? Do we know?
I don't believe so. I think everything that we've done so far, which has been primarily in assessment mode and planning, those funds came out of that $5 million, and it's
Okay.
been drawn down.
Nothing has come out of there. All right, because I know that we had, the legislation set a cap of 100,000 K for demolitions without legislative approval. Anything above that will require legislative approval. So that's, again, I'm asking the questions to see where we pull the money from. Sure. You know, whether was it the 5 million, was it 20 million, what work has occurred? Because if no one has come back to this body to get approval over a certain dollar amount, then we have an issue, right? Although that we know this is a site that we all want to come down. However, there's a process and protocol that must be followed as well, all right? So if we can get those questions, Mr. Titrum, so we can have a more complete picture here as we move forward, all right? The balance that's in that, so that would be like $1 million balance in the, out of the 5 million, right? That would be left there, the 5 million, because we had
Approximately.
we took 500,000 to do some work. You said it was about 4.5 million. We took 3.5 out to cover the match, plus we're going to figure out what the other $1 million is intended to be used for. And then, so it's about $1 million left in that, $1 million left in that fund, right?
I think a little south of there, but yes, sir.
Okay. And there's any active discussions around that 1.5, that $1 million that is needed for what? Are we expected to still be needed for this national equity set? But I guess we won't know that answer until we figure out what that difference is going to be used for between that 3.5 and 2.5.
And the other point to remember is that this is a very old site, and it went through the covenant not to sue, the VAT process.
Yeah.
But part of the remedy that was required for a couple of areas on the site were keep the cover in place, keep that, there's about, I'd say 90% of the site is covered by hard surface concrete. And so to the extent that we move forward and start to remove hard surface, and there are other, we're certainly going to want to do some other additional investigation to determine whether there's any other issues under the concrete. So this $10 million gets us a long way towards site prep. But I think, once we get past the demo, removal of all the waste and the asbestos in the demo, there's some U.S. underground storage tanks that were closed in place and need to be pulled. But, and that's all included in our estimate of around $10 million that we put in for the grant. But I don't know, but I would anticipate that there'll be additional work that will need to be funded.
Got it. Okay. Okay. That's all from me at the moment. Any other further questions from the committee? Sure. Yes, Councilman McCormick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Agreed, this is a great project. Thank you for your work. Bringing this thing down or cleaning this site up is going to be a huge improvement for the neighborhood. Just a couple kind of tactical questions, Chair, to the director, whoever, John or whoever wants to answer. Does this funding, the 9, whatever, almost 10, can you walk me through that a little bit more? Is that removing the building, remediating the soil? Like, what does that look like?
The application
Buildings.
itself has 5 things that we included. Removing and disposing of all the asbestos from the structure and the grounds. Removing and disposing of all the solid waste that was illegally put there. It's about 30,000 cubic yards of solid waste were dumped there illegally. Removing the underground storage tanks that were closed in place. Demolishing the remaining structures and hard surface, and then performing any additional assessment and remediation as appropriate.
So this place is just a mess, a complete mess.
It is a contradiction because it is a mess, but it has a covenant not to sue, which is the gold standard for brownfields. It's like, oh, we know what's there. We don't need any further remediation.
Okay.
In its current state, but since we're going to be removing some concrete, that's going to change it.
Okay, all right. And then, Chair, to the team, it looks like the parcel just south of it is privately owned. Is that correct? The big open parcel?
That's correct.
Okay.
There's there's 3 parcels just to the south. One immediately adjacent is owned by one company, and the other 2, it's called PN Holdings, and the other 2 just south of there are owned by another, a chum organization that owns that.
Okay, and Chair, to the team, is there any conversation with those groups? I'm just thinking about, obviously, the site will be available for redevelopment, but, it appears that's vacant land south of this site, if I'm looking at the map correctly. So I guess the question is there conversation with them? Does it make sense to have an even larger footprint to market it for reuse after it's cleaned?
Through the chair to the councilman, yes, those conversations are taking place.
Okay.
That would
And do
be an
we
ideal
have
scenario.
a theory for end use here? I understand that, I'm not asking for end user, but is it industrial? Is it food? What is the theory for end use here?
So I think through the chair to the council person, this is obviously an industrial area, right? If you
Yep.
look at the whole purpose for why the sites fund was created, it is the lack of these 10-plus acre sites, particularly these 30-plus acre sites, right? This is why we've had such a hard time, one of the many reasons we've had a really hard time kind of attracting the scale and quality of industrial development, commercial development that we want to see in our city. So sites like this are critically important. But again, to that specific end user, I mean, we get all the time RFPs from companies around looking for sites around this scale that we've simply not had an opportunity to respond to because we haven't had land like this available.
And
right?
Chair to the director, how many acres is this site total?
Yeah.
14? Okay. All right.
Large.
All right, thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Joe Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've driven by this site location on many occasions, probably too many more than I can want to count, and it's always been an eyesore.
Yeah.
It has been horrible. So, first I want to applaud the administration for being able to come in here and deal with this issue. And it seems like a Herculean task because the facility is so big. So I guess part of this resource here would be demolition in the entire site. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And then after you demolition it, do you have to do remediation of the soil as well? Is that a part of all this?
The primary funding that was requested in our budget, there was some left over after the demolition was completed, but not a lot. We always assumed that there'd need to be additional work to fully characterize the contamination at the site once we remove all the hard surface and that it acting as a cap. And then moving on to do the site preparation work itself, like the grading and things like that.
Now, I know this has been an eyesore for the best part of my life. How long has this been vacant and abandoned here?
The National Acme Company actually worked at this location, operated at this location until about 2000.
What?
Yes. They sold it to an investment group, the Acme Realty Company. And Acme Realty, I think they did fund some of the environmental work there during the 2000s. But I don't think they did anything with it, like, I don't know how well they kept up a repair. I don't think that they got any really good tenants in there. I think they probably leased it out for some, like, low-quality warehousing space and things like that. And in fact, in about 2012, 2013, they leased it out to the bad actors who brought in the garbage and did an illegal demolition of most of that building.
Wow.
without removing any asbestos.
Ah.
And so it has been, up through the 90s, it was an operating business. It may have been diminished from its heyday, but they were there and operating.
Is there some way we can go after these bad actors and recoup some of the funds?
Well, the bad actors spent some time in federal prison, and I don't know if they're judgment proof at this point or not. But these were in really like small business individuals, not a major company that would do all this. These are small operators that apparently may have done this kind of thing in the past and got away with it.
Well, I'm surprised that, our building and housing hadn't cited them. Is there any record of that? I mean, I thought the place was abandoned. Most of my life I'm going by and it looks ugly, eyesore, weeds all over the place, building falling apart. And then as you look at the aerial view, you can see the entire roof is gone.
big chunk of it has fallen in.
Yeah. It's, I mean, how did we let that happen? You know, and I know you wasn't here then, but
Well, I know that, like I told through the chair to the council member, the Building and Housing Department was allocated that $5 million to do demolition at the site. But at the time, it was privately owned. And it had been declared a nuisance, and it was condemned in around 2018, I think. When we started working on this, I think I started in like early 21, when I started working on this, when it was affiliated with a different project. The concern was, we had that money to go in and do stuff, but, you know, first of all, it was privately owned, so we'd have to undertake to do that, and then we would put a lien on the property that the owners would never be able to pay. It was just, you know, they don't have the $5 million. And secondly, or at least that was the impression, because they're not doing anything. And second, I think once it went into a foreclosure process, if we were to go on and actually make improvements in terms of taking down the building, unless we were able to attach that to the tax duplicate, we wouldn't be able to easily recover it. We'd have to file a lawsuit to try to recover it for the costs expended. And so the thinking was, and it took a long time to go through foreclosure. It took, I think it was in the system for a couple of years. But I think it was in April of this year, it finally transferred to the city out of the foreclosure process. And so that was when we believed it was appropriate to start doing work that would improve the property because the city owned it.
right.
So it was a long period of time, but, you know, the frustration about that foreclosure process, it seemed like every month they were doing a new service to a new, you know, successor bank or something like that. It took a long time.
I see. And Mr. Chairman, not to belabor it, the question I'd like to ask, because this is important, you know, for the department, right? One of the things that I know that we have limited amounts of funds and resources, and I think that my colleague Jenny Spencer talked about it. What are we going to do, given the fact that, you know, funding that was, you know, if I had my way, I'd probably give you $100 million in ARPA funding, so that you could talk about how you can bring new development and new businesses in the city of Cleveland.
We're open to that, Council.
Right. So the issue is, this is important, because I think at one point we had a lot of money in UDAG, right? So when did we have? If I can remember, we had, like, at one space in time almost $200 million, not 200 million, maybe 160 million or something like that during my period of time of UDAG. Do we still have those funds available?
Through the chair to the councilman, we have approximately $10 million in UDAG funds available.
So what happened to all the other money that was once in that pot?
Through the chair to the councilman, my understanding through a lot of conversations, again, it is dollars that came in as a federal program in the 1980s. You know, it is largely a revolving loan pool, some of which has gone out and come back in.
Right.
At points, the department in the past has kind of efforts to recapitalize. They may have given a long-term loan, and they've kind of called those notes back at, say, 50 cents on the dollar, right, to get, like, more money back in to be able to do projects. I do know that there was a period of time around the Great Recession when past administration used some of those funds to cover gaps, right, that existed throughout the municipal corporation. You know, some of those dollars have been granted out to help move projects forward over the course of time. So, again, I think we're talking about a funding source that dates back to the 1980s that just over the course of time has kind of dwindled down.
Right. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to request a quick review of the funds that was in that UDAG account. I remember the council during the period I was here, that was a lot of money.
Yeah.
And so right now, if we would be able to have preserved that UDAG along as that revolving line. I remember that was a big talk way back in the day because that helped us to stay stabilized when we wanted to have incentives to bring new development into the city. So having an accounting of that, if we could go back, you know, where it was at, I think it was $180 million that we had in that account at one time, and just trying to figure out where that money went. So a request of information of giving us it doesn't have to be totally in depth, but just enough to give us an idea of how that money got pushed down and spent away. And then do we have, and then what your expectations of what will potentially come back into that account?
Thank you, Councilman. Yeah, we'll work between the staff and the department to put something together.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Councilwoman Santana?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do want to put in a motion for an amendment,
Yes.
and it would be in the title, line 6, after development, insert or its successor or designee for.
All right. There's been motions. There's a second. There's been motion and second. Any discussion? See no discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right, ayes have it. All right, any further comments, concerns, or questions from the committee? All right, seeing no further questions, ordinance number 1009-2024 as amended stands approved. Now, I want to make sure that we work with Mr. Titron to get that info over before we go to finance, because I'll be waiting for it before finance. If I don't get it, it won't be passed. Okay.
Good.
All right. And Madam Clerk, please add Councilman Polenzek to this ordinance as a sponsor, please. All right. Thank you. All right. Thank you. And ordinance number 1016 is being held at the request of the Economic Development Department. All right. All right. Thank you, everybody. Committee adjourned.